So we're going to continue on with our circle work. In this lesson, we're going to look at how we find the area of a circle. The information we have to know is basically the radius and what pi is. And pi, once again, as we've said on the previous video multiple times, is something we got to learn to the 5 significant digits, which is 3.14159. When we talk about the diameter, it's that there are 3 complete diameters that make up the circumference of the circle with a little bit left over, which is the 0.14159 of the fraction. I also have to understand that on the radius, it only is half of the diameter. So if I'm given a diameter, I'm going to cut it in half. But I need the distance from the center, or the origin, out to the edge. So when I look at the area then, the concept of area is just like that, of a square, of a parallelogram, of a triangle, of a rectangle. Is we're talking about how much does it take to fill up that center part of the shape. Now if I did it like a square or rectangle when it was introduced to us, and I drew a whole bunch of little boxes and trying to count all those boxes, well, they wouldn't even be half boxes. I'd have corners of boxes, and it would be very difficult to try to count the area of a circle. So we have a formula that we're going to use. And that formula we're going to plug in for pi every time, 3.14159, when we do our math. The formula says that pi r squared, or pi times the radius squared, is going to be my area. So as long as I'm given my radius, then all I have to do is plug it into this equation. Once again, the equation has an equal sign. So I'm going to plug in my 4 so I can do the math. So when I plug in the 4 for the r squared, I know what I actually have is 4 times 4, because the radius is 4, and the square tells me to multiply the big number, what the r would be, times itself 2 times. So 4 times 4 gives me 16. So I know mathematically then, what I'm saying is that I have 16 times pi, and pi is 3.14159. So I'm going to write that math problem down, 3.14159 times the 16 square inches, which is what my r squared is. And then I'm going to use my handy dandy calculator, and I'm going to type that in and hit an equal sign so that I don't have to worry about doing all that multiplication showing step by step, because some of these are going to be difficult. But it helps me check my work. So when I multiply by 6, I get that number, and then when I go back to the 1, I just put down a 0, because the second number tells me to bring down a 0, and then I can multiply each of those, but it's a 1, so I just write down the numbers again in the same order. As long as I'm writing neatly, then everything stacks up correctly according to their positions, and then I add, move 5 times because I multiplied, and 3.14159 has those 5 significant digits, so I'm going to have to move it from right to left 5 times. So I know that my answer is 50.26544 square inches for the area of that circle that's given to me. So I'd write it on an answer line wherever the answer line is provided. But what if they try to trick me and they only give me my diameter? Well, a diameter is just 2 of what the radius is. So I have 2 radii for every 1 diameter. So I'm just going to take my diameter and cut it in half. We're going to have that on this work today. So I take the diameter and I divide by 2. It tells me that I have 4. That takes us back to the original problem that we just talked about. So it would be the same math every time, because on that one, it has the radius, of 4. So what I want you to do is we're going to work through this whole sheet that I have given you. We're going to work through the entire thing. Some of them, a couple of them you're going to do on your own. Most of them I'm going to do with you. It's a lot of steps. It's not difficult work, especially when you have your calculator to do the big multiplication problems and to check your work on. But you have to show your work. You have to make sure you're going to have the correct label, and you just have to take your time and make sure that you actually have the radius. And if you don't have the radius, then you have to take the diameter and divide it by 2. This needs to be on your paper so you know what the formula is every time. So I can't remember if I included it on your assignment or not, but if not, please write this down so you can look at it every time. Once again, when you take the I-STEP test, NWEA, Movie Max, you can always go back and check those references or your reference sheet and find the formula. It's not about memorizing the formula at this point in 6th grade. It's about knowing that this formula tells me it's the area of the circle, and then I know what pi is, and I can plug in what my radius is when it's given to me or I found it from the diameter. So when I look at this problem, I'm going to do my first step, which is taking my radius and squaring it. My radius is 15. So my first step I'm going to show in my work is 15 times 15. Handy dandy calculator, I check it, 15 times 15. It is 225. That's where my label comes from, because on area, I know it's always squared, but on this one, I'm getting it because I'm multiplying 15 feet by 15 feet. So I know that when I square my radius, it becomes 225 square feet. That is what I do with my next step, because pi is touching the r squared, and I know that's multiplication. So I'm going to use my 225, and I'm going to multiply by 3.14159. Once again, I use my handy dandy calculator to check the work on each step. Got to show my steps though. How many layers of multiplication am I going to show on this math problem below? So hopefully you said 3, because I want to multiply by my 5, then I'm going to do a second layer and multiply by my 2, and then I'm going to do a third layer and multiply by my other 2. So I should see answers to multiplication problems 3 different times. But if I type in 3.14159 and multiply by the 5, it tells me what my answer is, and I can make sure that I'm doing it correctly. Showing the steps is what gives you the credit for the work. The calculator makes that easier because you can check it every time and make sure it's right. But when I multiply each of these by my 5, then I get 1570795. Then I have to go to my second number, and once again, my second number tells me to bring down a 0. Hold that place value. If I'm not willing to show that, then most likely I'm going to forget it, and then my answer is going to be completely wrong. So I then multiply by my 2. When I multiply 3.14159 by 2, it gives me 628318. Then I have another 2, don't I? So I have to go to my third number. Tells me to bring down now. I have 2 positions behind it, so I have to bring down 2 zeros to hold those place value. And then I multiply by this 2 again. That should be pretty easy, because if I did this one correctly, it's just the same numbers in the same order. They just don't line up directly because I had to hold 2 place values instead of 1. My final step then is adding them all together before I figure out where the decimal goes. So when I add them up, and they're all lined up column by column by column, I end up with 706,85775. Big numbers, but not difficult math because we're able to use our calculator. But I have to remember that I multiply by a decimal, and in my pi, I know I have 5 significant decimal positions, so I have to move from right to left 5 times, which tells me that my final area answer for that circle number 1 is 706.85775 square feet. Make sure that you showed your work. Make sure you have the answer. Make sure that you have the label. And if I move too fast, which is very likely, then pause the video before you go on to question 2. So in question 2, we're given a circle, and we're told that the diameter is 22 inches. So what do I have to do first? So hopefully you said in your head that in order to do my r squared, then I have to find out what my radius is. So I have to take my diameter of 22 and divide it by 2, because I know that it takes 2 radii to make up 1 diameter. 22 divided by 2 tells me that I'm going to use the number 11, and then I can take my 11, I can plug it in to my equation. So I'm going to have 11 squared here. So 11 times 11 is 121. The label is inches, so I know I have 121 square inches. Then I'm now going to multiply by pi, because that's what my formula tells me. Pi is 3.14159. And I'm going to multiply by my 121 square inches that I just found. Should have 3 labels of multiplication answers here once again. Multiplying by the ones is pretty easy. It keeps all the numbers in the same order. So I multiply by 1, I still get 314,159. My second number tells me to bring down a 0. Then I'm multiplying by 2. When I multiply by 2, I get 628,318. And then I'm going to multiply by 1 again. Now that 1 is in my third position. So my third number tells me to bring down now 2 zeros to hold my place value. Always pause the video if I'm going too fast. I know I'm doing this quick and you have a lot more writing to do than I do, okay? But I don't want the video to take a really long time. When I multiply by the 1 then, once again I get the 314,159. I make sure everything is lined up nice and organized. Add them together. I get a lot of digits there, but I have to remember to put in my 5 decimal positions. So I'm going to move from the right to left 5 times, which gives me an answer of 380 point. So then in my answer box, if your answer is too big, your writing is too big to go inside the small oval, what I did is I made a bigger oval. So just right above it, that's fine also on your answer sheet. But your final answer should be 380.13239 square inches. Pause the video if you need to before we go on to question 3, and then I am moving forward. Question 3, I'm given my radius. I know it's 9 yards, so I have my equation. I know I'm going to take r squared, so my radius is going to be plugged in there as 9. So I know that squared tells me to multiply it by itself 2 different times. So I'm going to show 9 times 9. 9 times 9 is 81. So I know that I have 81 square yards that I'm dealing with. That is my radius squared. I plug that in into my equation where I'm multiplying by pi. So I write out my math problem. 3.14159 times the 81 squared. So on this one I should only have to show 2 different layers of multiplication answers since there's only 2 digits in my squared radius. I multiply by the 1, keeps the numbers in the order, 314,159. Then my second number tells me to bring down 1 0 to hold my place value, and then I multiply by my 8s. Once again, my calculator helps me make sure that I do that correctly. I get 2513272. Everything needs to be lined up correctly so that you can do your correct addition then. And you end up with 25446879. 5 decimal positions in my multiplication problem. So I move from right to left 5 times. When I do that, then I know I end up with a final answer of 254.46879 square yards for the area of a 9-yard radius circle. So on number 4, then they give us 12 yards. What I want you to do is I want you to pause. No, excuse me, not ready for that yet. Number 4, we have 12-yard diameter. What I want you to do is divide to find the radius. The diameter is 12 yards. I'm going to take it and divide it by 2 because I know it takes 2 radii to make up 1 diameter. 12 divided by 2 is 6. Then I can plug that into my equation. So I'm going to square my 6, which tells me to take 6 times 6, which is 36 yards. And then I know I'm going to take my squared radius and multiply by pi. 3.14159 multiplied by 36. So I only have to show my 2 multiplication answers on this one as well. Start with the 6 and I multiply, and I should get 1884954. My second number tells me to bring down a 0 to hold that place value. Multiply by 3. which gives me 9,42477. They're lined up correctly in their place value areas. So once I add, I get 113,09724. Once again, I know I'm moving quick, so the video doesn't take a long time for me recording. Just pause it as you continue to show your work and write your information down. 5 decimal spaces for the significant digits in pi, so I have to move from right to left 5 times, which gives me my final answer, and I make sure that I put it in the area box, or if once again if it's too big for in your writing, then go ahead and write it above in the space or even below, works for me. But your final answer should be 113 and 0.09724 square yards. Number 5 and 6 then. Number 5 gives me a radius of 3 inches, and number 6 gives me a diameter of 34 feet. Now what I would like you to do is pause the video, show all the steps that you need to show the work and get credit, get the correct answer, the correct label, write it on your paper, unpause the video and start up again, because I'm going to show you the steps that you should have gone through to get to the correct answer. So hopefully you have answers for 5 and 6. So on 5 and 6 then, I still use my areas equal to pi r squared. That's my formula to find the area of a circle. I'm going to use my radius on number 5, and my radius is 3 inches. I know according to my expression there, or equation there, I'm going to square the 3, which tells me that 3 times 3, you should have gotten 9 square inches. Then I just multiply that by pi. Pi, once again, is 3.14159. Multiplied by my 9 square inches, you should have gotten final answer for number 5 of 28.27431 square inches. When you did number 6, I'm hoping that you started by dividing my diameter by 2 into the different radii that make it up. So you should have 34 feet divided by 2, and that gave you the answer of 17. Then you could go on with the formula for the area of a circle by taking your radius, which is 17, and squaring it. So you should have 17 times 17, which is 289. So I know that that is 289 square feet. Then we plug it into the formula again and multiply by pi, which is 3.14159. When I get my final answer, then I get 907.91951 square feet. So hopefully you got those correct. If you didn't, look at the work that I showed, look at the work that you showed, and figure out where your mistake is. If you don't see it, please raise your hand and ask, because it doesn't do us any good just to move on if we don't understand what we're doing. The other part, as we have done all along in math, is we use them in different scenarios and different story problems. So there's a couple that you'll see on our paper that we're going to look at. Number 7 says, if the radius is 10 feet, what expression below will be the area of the circle? So at the bottom of my screen, I gave you a reminder of the difference between an expression and an equation. Expressions is a math problem without an answer. Equations are math problems with answers. So all of these, if you notice, they don't have equal signs and a final answer. So we're looking for an expression where we've done some of the work, but we haven't finished up. So notice we have our pi, and then our labels out to the right on each of them. It doesn't matter where the label goes because we know what it is that we're going to look for, and it's going to be a squared label. But one of the things to also remember is the associative property that once again tells me that it doesn't matter what order I do my multiplication in, doesn't matter what order I do my addition in, because it's always going to be the same answer. So we use pi r squared, but they're showing really r squared times pi with my squared label. Either way, it really doesn't matter. But what I do is I look for the information that's given, and I'm given that my radius is 10 feet. I'm going to use that information and plug it into my formula. So I know that my area is equal to pi times 10 squared. Well, what is 10 squared? Well, 10 squared is the same as having 10 times 10, which is 100. So now that associative property tells me I can switch those two numbers. Doesn't matter that that's a symbol or not, but I can switch those and be in any order that I want. So when I switch those two orders, I see that the area is equal to 100 times pi with an answer label of square feet. And when I look at the options that they've given me, A is my correct answer. So now I want you to pause the video and I want you to do number 8 on your own, and we'll see what we got. So hopefully you have an answer for number 8, and I want you to follow along and check your work. And the first thing I hope that you did was you underline the important information that they gave you. And then the second step would be that you realized, I'm hoping, that the diameter, which I can't use, have to divide it by 2 and find out what the radius is. So when I take 16 and I divide it by 2, then I know the radius that I'm going to use is 8. So then I can plug that into my expression, or my equation in this case. So my area is going to be equal to pi r squared. R squared is 8 times 8, since 16 divided by 2 is 8. So I know that I have the area is equal to pi times 64 with a label of square feet. And I messed up because that should be inches. I apologize. Once again, the associative property tells me it doesn't matter what order my numbers are that I'm dealing with. So if I switch those around, I end up with 64 times pi with my squared label. Once again, I realize that my label is wrong, and I apologize. But when I look at the information that's given, I can see that B should be the correct answer. So hopefully you got B as the correct answer, and if you didn't, then I would guess, and I could be wrong, but I would guess that you chose A because you didn't divide your 16 by 2. So look at your work if you didn't get B as your right answer and figure out why you didn't. But you have to divide 16 by 2 to get your radius. Alright, so then number 9 is the last one. It's a story problem that we can solve. You'll have a story problem that's very similar tonight on your assignment. Number 9 says a cow is tethered with a rope. Tethered means that there's a post with the rope and it's tied to it. That's all it means. The rope is 20 feet long. What is the maximum area that the cow can graze? So, what I need you to realize is that if it is tethered from the cow to this point and the cow walks around in a circle, that is my radius that it's talking about. And the radius is what I have to use in my math problem. So I know I'm going to use my 20 feet, which is my radius, and I use my formula once again of area is equal to pi r squared, where the 20 is my radius or my r. So when I plug that in, I know pi is going to be multiplied by 20 squared. 20 times 20 is 400. So pi times 400 square feet, well, then I have to take my 3.14159 and multiply by 400. I have a 0, which I have to hold that place value, and another 0, so I have to hold 2 place values before I can multiply by my 4. So when I multiply it together, I would actually have 1,256,366,00 if I did it on my paper. My calculator, it just drops those zeros off. So don't let that confuse you when you do it on your paper and you type it in your calculator and it already has dropped those zeros off. It's already dropped them off. It did move it 2 or 5 times. It just dropped those 2 zeros from the very end. But your final answer then is going to be 1,256 and 636 or 636 thousandths of a square feet that cow gets to walk around and graze in. So there's a lot of steps to this, not as much as the next video will be, but it's just making sure that I follow the steps. Then I understand that my equation tells me that my answer is always going to be taking pi, 3.14159, times my radius, the distance from the center or the origin, out to the edge that is squared. So as long as I do it step by step, I'm going to be good to go. If you have any questions while you're working on your next paper, then please come and ask.